When I was a teenager playing guitar, I'd say there's probably 5 guitarists that I listened to all of the time, and were a big influence on me and my playing. 4 of those are probably really obvious if you've ever heard me play. One is Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Buddy Guy, who I don't listen to so much now, but at the time I listened to a lot. Mark Knopfler, who again I don't listen to that much now, but was probably the biggest influence on me of all of those. So that was Clapton, Hendrix, Knopfler, Buddy Guy. The 5th one is probably harder to guess, and it's Steve Rothery from Marillion. I was quite a big Marillion fan for a few years. And the solo I'm looking at today is by him, and it's from the track Season's End, which is the title track from the album Season's End. And I was really into Marillion for I don't know, 5-6 years. And Season's End was the last album that I heard by them. I haven't heard anything that they've done since, and I think they've made about 20 albums in total. So I really should go back and look at some. But Season's End happens to be the last one that I bought and listened to. I don't know why, just your taste changes. Anyway, Steve Rothery, brilliant guitarist. His solos are still a big influence on me when I'm playing, even though I don't listen to Marillion much now, or at all. I can still tell that when I'm playing certain things, that's where the influence comes from, definitely. So anyway, that's a little intro to this one. So it's the guitar solo from Season's End by Marillion, Steve Rothery. Okay, the song's in the key of C minor, so if you think you're likely to be playing in this sort of area if you were improvising, C pentatonic minor. And you've also got the C natural minor there, which is... And one of the things that Steve Rothery does a lot in his playing, or the playing of his that I heard, the first sort of part of Marillion's career, he uses the natural minor a lot, and he won't just play pentatonics, he'll go into natural minor notes a lot in his playing. So he comes in with just a slide down, just a noise really, one of those. So it's not a specific note, it's just one of those. And then hits the root note of the key, the C, which is this note here, 8 on the E string. Plays the 10, which is the next note in the scale, with 3rd finger, but slides to 11 rather than playing the little finger 11. And then repeat that on the next string. So it's, there's a little pause after that first note you heard there. So. Then we continue up the scale. 8 on the 4th string, hammer onto 10. And then continue up the scale, but just missing one note of the natural minor. We play 1st finger on the 8th fret, flattened over the 2nd and 3rd strings, and you're mainly hitting the 3rd string, but you're sort of catching the 2nd as well. Like that. And then we play a 10 on the 3rd string, pull off to the 8. So I'll just put all of that together slowly. And straight out of that 8 here, you put your finger back on the 10 on the 3rd string and do a bend, release, pull off, which is a phrase that's in almost every solo you'll ever hear by anyone. So it's playing the 10, bend to sound like a 12, let it down to a 10, pull off to an 8 like this. That's with one pick. And then you pick the 8 again and do a quick hammer onto 10. So you barely hear the 8, it's mainly the 10 that you're hearing. So I'll just put all of that together up to speed. And then continuing on from there, does a couple of palm muted notes. He does a lot of palm muting in his playing, and you probably know what palm muting is, but it's just the side of your hand there resting right on the edge of the saddles where the strings just go over the saddles, and it mutes the sound a bit. So if I don't palm mute, it sounds like this. If I palm mute too much, deadening it a bit too much, so I move back a bit, about there, and that's so that you can still hear the note, but it's just kind of muted the sound a bit. And when he's palm muting there, he plays the 10 on the 4th string, followed by an 8 on the 3rd string. And then we've got a 10 on the 3rd string, bend, and play an 8 on the 1st string. Now when you're going slowly, this is harder to do than when you're going fast actually, but what you need to do is that bend on the 10 on the 3rd string goes up and then it stops, you don't hear it come down. So I use the side of my thumb as I pick the next note, which was the 1st string 8. My thumb, side of my thumb touches on the 3rd string to stop it ringing, then I can let the string down. So I can go and do that faster. And that's a good tip for any string bends where you don't hear them come down. And then play an 11 on the 2nd string, but bend it up to a 13, let it down to an 11 and pull off to an 8. So that's a bend, release, pull off again. So that little phrase was from the palm mute. And then play the 11 again, play it again and bend to a 13 like we did before. And that note rings. So I'll just put all of that together from the palm mute. Now at this point it does something that's quite hard to work out. When I was listening to this yesterday, I was transcribing it and found this bit tricky to work out. But I think what he's doing is holding that bend and then he lets the string down, slides along to 13 and bends up to sound like a 16, so that's a bigger bend. But it does it really fast like this. Even quicker than that in the song. And as soon as you've played the big bend from the 13, which is without picking again, it's as soon as you played that, you then play on the 1st string 11, 13, 13 again and bend to 15 like this. So if I play from the initial bend on the 11, and once you've got that bend there ringing, then let it down to a 13 again, pull off to an 11, so it's another bend, release, pull off. So again from the bend on the 11. And there's another quick hammer on from 11 to 13 on 1st string. And then an 11 on the 2nd string. So from the palm mute again, it's so I'll just play the solo from the beginning, a bit slower than the actual song. So it's so melodic. Then the next part, another difficult part to work out, come back down to the C, which is the root note of the key, 8 on the 1st string. You play that note and play a 9 on the 2nd string. And then the 9 rings for like a split second, and then you do a pull off to an 8 without picking it again. Hammer onto a 9, pull off to an 8, hammer onto a 9, pull off to an 8. So that's this. But it's quicker than that. And straight off of that, we then play a 10 on the 3rd string. This is all natural minor, remember. So then we go to the second string again, play 8, 9, 11, 13. Now that's with one pick, so you play the 8, hammer onto 9, hammer onto 11, slide to 13. It's literally up fast. Do it slowly. So what I've just done slowly is so you end up here in 10th position, go to the first string and play the 10, similar to what we just did. Play the 10, hammer onto 11, hammer onto 13, pull off to 11, pull off to 10. And slowly. This will take a bit of practice, this part. You go back to second string, little finger on the 13, play that note, pull off to the 11, pull off to a 9, so you've got to stretch your fingers back a bit like this, and then slide back to the 8. That's another thing, that when you're going really fast, it's probably a bit easier than when you try to play it slowly like this. And off the end of that, play third string 10, pull off to 8. It's the most difficult part of the solo, this, because of the speed. Steve Rothery doesn't do a lot of really fast runs. Again, I should point out I haven't heard anything past whatever year this came out, 1989 I think. So he maybe does do loads of fast stuff now, but he didn't up to this point. So this is an unusual run. It's difficult to play. So I'm just going to play the whole of this sort of fast phrase, but slowed down. And up to speed. Something like that. And straight out of that, he then goes into the next phrase, which is a more melodic, kind of lyrical sort of phrase that he plays. Back to the second string 8, play that note, hammer onto a 9, then play the 8 again. And play a 10 on the third string, followed by the 8 on the second. And then your first finger hops across to the 8 on the third string, and play that note, slide back to 7 like this. And then a little bit tricky this, you pick that 7 again and bend the string probably downwards to sound like an 8. So that little phrase was. And then you hold that bend there and pick it again. So I'll just play that from the previous phrase. And then you can let it down, but you don't want to hear this, but because of what you're doing next with the pick, that string will be muted. So pick the 8 on the second string with the second finger, and then play the 7 on the third string where you're no longer bending. I'll just play that from the previous phrase. And then we want an 8 on the fourth string, 8 on the fifth, like this. And that rings for a second, then slides to a 10. So I'll try and play that little phrase up to speed. And that 10 I've just slid to is part of the next phrase, which then continues pentatonic, 8 on the fourth, 10 on the fourth, 8 on the third. Those 3 notes are palm muted. So slowly with the previous phrase. And from there we continue up the pentatonic scale, but in a different sort of position. Play the 10 on the third string, slide to 12. And then pick the 11 on the second string, followed by the 10 on the first string. So it's just on this. This is a little chord shape. And then you need to play 13 on the second string. Now, I probably wouldn't use my little finger for that because the note afterwards is a 15 on the first string, which is there. So I really want my little finger for that. So I'd go, use third finger, and then you can stretch to get the 15. So that's... And then probably my favourite part of the solo, you then need to swap positions. So your first finger goes to 13 on the first string, and then play that note and hammer onto the 15 on the first string. And then he does a really nice bend here. This is just so nice in the solo, I think. He plays the 15, the fingers are already lined up against. Got these, or this one at least, to help with the bend. This one's more about muting the other strings. But these two fingers both doing this bend, because the first string's the hardest string to bend. And what we've got to do here is play a 15, bend it to sound like an 18, so it's a tone and a half bend. So you're making that sound like this. And all the way back down again. And then play an 11. I think it's my favourite phrase of this solo. And then kind of an answering phrase, starting on this 11 again. So you pick the 11, hammer onto 13. And then pick the 13 again, bend and release to make it sound like a 15. And an 11 on the second string. And that kind of interval is a typical Steve Rothery interval that you hear in his solos. So it's kind of simple stuff mostly, but just so well put together. Okay, so I think at this point I might just play from the beginning of the solo again, just to show you where we're up to. I'm going to do it slowly. Okay, now at that point, there's a pause. There's another really cool thing about this solo. He stops playing for a second, and the keyboard does this little phrase, something like... It's something like that, I'm not sure if it's exactly that. And then the guitar answers it, so it's a real question and answer, call and response thing. And he plays an 11 on the first string, second string, sorry, 11, 8, 11, 11 again, but bend it, and you hold this note for as long as you can. And the first 11 is kind of a rake into it, just one of these where you mute the other strings. The note you want to hear is this 11 on the second string, and you kind of drag the pick down the fourth and the third strings before getting to the second. It's not something that he would have thought about as much as that when he did it. It's just a feel thing. If you want to be exact, that's what he did. So it's that note, then the 8, then the 11, and then the 11 bending to the 13. And at that point, there's another pause where the note's actually still ringing. He's got a lot of sustain. It almost goes into feedback at that point. But the keyboard does another similar phrase, like... I think something like that. And he's still holding that bend. And right on the end, lets it down. So, and quickly jumps up to 18 on the second string. Play that note. This is the second answering phrase. Play that note, bend to a 20, let it down to an 18, pull off to a 16, so it's another bend, release, pull off. And you play the same bend again, 18 to 20, bend release pull off again and play the 17 on the 3rd string. But the second bend release pull off was a bit slower than the first, so it's very bluesy. Another pause while the keyboard does something like, and then the answering phrase on the guitar is 2nd string, still in this C natural minor scale, 2nd string 8, hammer on to 9, pull off to 8 again, then 10 on the 3rd string, 8 on the 3rd string, and then a 7 on the 3rd string, slide to 8 and slide back to 7, 8 on the 4th string, and then 8 on the 4th string again, and very quickly slide to 10. So that phrase was, and that is one of the phrases in this solo that kind of sums up his lead playing, I think. And again, I should say I haven't heard any of his later stuff or anything from the last 30 odd years. But anyway, the bits I do know, that's his playing in a nutshell, that little phrase. And he's heading a little bit for target notes, which are sort of notes that are in the chords. And he's landing deliberately on certain notes when the chord changes to make it sound good with that chord. I don't know whether he's thinking about that or if he's just doing it by ear. Either way, it's really good. And at that point, there's a smaller pause. The keyboard does another full phrase, but the guitar kind of interrupts it, comes in about halfway through. And this phrase is 10 on the 3rd string, bend to a 12, let it down to a 10, pull off to an 8, so another bend release pull off. But while the 8's ringing, you then slide to a 7 like this. And that's the end of the solo. So I'll do a demo of this solo. I might have put that at the beginning of this in the edit, or I might put it at this next point. But anyway, in the demo you should be able to see the phrasing and see how it all sort of fits in. But I'll just play it from the beginning really slowly now, and hopefully it will kind of make a bit of sense. Okay, so that was the whole solo played slowly. So I've gone through every phrase. It's quite difficult. It's not the hardest solo in the world, but it is quite difficult, I think. And I don't know whether he plays it like this live. I'm sure they probably do this song live. He probably does. It's a bit of an iconic solo in Marillion's early catalogue. I think so anyway. And he probably does play it pretty much note for note, if I had to guess. Last time I saw them was 1987, so I'm not too sure what they do now. Anyway, I'm going to check them out and see what they've been doing for the last few years. But yeah, brilliant guitarist, Steve Rothery. Check him out if you don't already know about him. Even if you're not into that kind of prog rock sort of stuff that Marillion do. He's worth listening to for his playing. The way he constructs his solos, and that is really good. And I will try to make a point of looking at some more. So if there's any Marillion solos you want to suggest that you'd like to see lessons on, then let me know, especially later things, because I won't have heard them, so it'd be quite good for me to have a look. Any questions, please put them in the comments, and click like if you like this one, and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, thanks.